Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the project partners, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar event. My name is Breda Maher. I am the Regional Executive Officer with the Eastern and Midlands Climate Action Regional Office. The event today is about opening a conversation on a particular project and subject area of evolving interest and significance, and that is the economic opportunities arising from climate action for local authorities. The chair of today's event is Anna-Marie Delaney, Chief Executive of Offaly County Council, and we have a number of speakers for today's event, and we should run for a duration of roughly an hour and a half with a panel discussion at the end of the presentations. Anna-Marie will shortly open the session formally, but just ahead of that, I just want to take a moment to extend our gratitude to the LGMA for hosting this event today, to acknowledge the work of Travis O'Doherty and Mark Moran in the background keeping the virtual event running, and to thank also Marina Duffy, business owner of the Business Enterprise Innovation and Urban Economic Renewal Committee of the CCMA, for her work in organising the event. Just a little bit on housekeeping. This is a webinar activated through the MS Teams platform. All attendees are in listen and view mode, and as I mentioned, there is a panel discussion at the end of the session. So we would invite you to post any questions, any commentaries that you may have, or any thoughts or ideas that you may have on the subject matter through the Q&A function, and that's at the top of your screen. It's got a little question mark in the bubble. I will pick up the questions throughout the session, and we'll address them at the panel discussion stage at the end. Now, to formally commence, I wish to introduce to you the chair of today's event, Anna-Marie Delaney. Anna-Marie is a tremendous sponsor of the Economic Opportunities Arising from Climate Action for Local Authorities project. Anna-Marie is the Chief Executive of Offaly County Council, having taken up the role since February 2016. She's held positions in Galway County Council and the Midland Regional Authority, Kildare County Council and Laois County Council as well, where she served as Director of Service for 10 years across many areas, including economic opportunities, economic development. Prior to taking the Chief Executive position in Offaly, Anna-Marie, taking the position in Offaly, Anna-Marie is the chairperson of the Economic Opportunities Arising from Climate Action Steering Group, established as part of the work programme of the Business, Enterprise Innovation and Urban Economic Renewal Committee of the CCMA. Anna-Marie, over to you to commence proceedings. I'll take down the slide.
Thanks, Breda. Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you all for joining us today for the presentation and the discussion around exploring economic opportunities arising from climate action for local authorities. The report being presented today was conducted in collaboration with expert partners and agencies under the auspices of the Eastern and Midlands Regional Climate Action Office. So just by way of background to the project, it followed on from the Creating Economic and Business Opportunities from Climate Change conference held in Tullamore in October 2019, and also in response to a range of policies at the moment, including the local authority climate action charters, the climate action adaptation strategies and the climate action plans. So in 2020, participants from the conference and interested parties were invited by the Eastern and Midlands Climate Action Regional Office to participate in a working group to discuss the issues involved in advising local authorities to identify economic opportunities arising from climate change. The working group evolved into the steering group, which I'm now chairing, and I just want to record my thanks also to Anne Doherty, the Chief Executive of Cork City Council, as the previous chair, for getting this project off the ground. Alan Dunney, the Regional Co-Ordinator for the Eastern Midlands CARO, will provide the project overview today, and the report is being presented today by Dr. John Cullen, together with the output of the steering group, and that will assist local authorities to lead and facilitate opportunities, we hope, that are arising from climate action policies and initiatives in accordance with the expanded role that local authorities have been given in economic and enterprise development since the Local Government Act 2014. And it will also, which included the integration of the local enterprise offices and the requirement to prepare local economic and community plans. It will further strengthen and equip local authorities with the necessary information to promote these opportunities, and will also position local authorities to identify and apply for additional funding streams to support economic development. In the course of the project, we have broadened the steering group membership, and Marie Donnelly, Chair of the Climate Change Advisory Council, accepted our invitation to come on board, and we will hear from Marie shortly. And also, I'm delighted that Enterprise Ireland have also joined the steering group and are represented by Aidan McKenna, who is a member of their new Climate Action Unit. Just before we proceed, I want to acknowledge a couple of people, and just to acknowledge and thank Dr. Sean O'Riordan for his expert input and his assistance to the Climate Action Regional Office in getting this project underway, and to my fellow steering group members for their leadership and expertise on the project. I want to also acknowledge the members of the working group under the chairmanship of Jack Keys. So my thanks to all involved in both of those groups. So the aims of the webinar today are to inform the sector of the opportunities for economic development arising from the work in leading on climate action, to outline the proposed next steps, and I suppose to look at and outline the engagements that have been undertaken and can be undertaken with stakeholders in terms of collaborating. And to also, I suppose, as Breda said there, to provide a forum to generate discussion and knowledge sharing. And we'll have an opportunity for discussion at the end of today's session and for questions and answers. So again, just to say to you, if you do have questions and answers, to put them up into the live chat. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Marie Donnelly. Marie is chairperson of the Climate Change Advisory Council. She has spent 30 years with the European Commission, where she was Director for Renewables, Energy Efficiency and Innovation. Marie collaborates with MRI in UCC and the UCD Energy Institute, and she was previously the first chairperson of Renewable Energy Ireland and was a non-executive director of Tipperary Energy Agency. So Marie is going to speak to you regarding climate action and enterprise, with a focus on the local government role, playing a lead role and central role. So over to you, Marie, and I ask you to unmute your mic. Go ahead. Thanks, Marie. Sorry, Marie, can you just unmute?
Hi.
Thank you.
Is it working now? No, it's not.
Yes, it's fine. No, that's fine.
It's working?
It's working. Thanks, Marie.
I'm getting mixed messages from my computer here, so I'm confused. So thanks very much indeed, Anna Maria, and thank you for the invitation to join the discussion today. I think the topic is particularly relevant, and it is situated at a momentous moment in time in Ireland, because we are going through quite a bit of change in terms of how we see climate action and the endeavours that we need to make. And as you all are aware, of course, we currently have a draft bill in the Oireachtas at the moment to update the 2015 Climate Action Bill. And the new bill is designed to, shall we say, regularise and routinise the whole approach to dealing with climate action, both from the perspective of mitigation and indeed adaptation. And one of the roles there is to take the target of net zero by 2050 and bring it forward and make it more relevant to ourselves in our daily lives, by having a carbon budget for 5 years, which is from 2021 to 2025, and a second carbon budget from 2026 to 2030 with a provisional one thereafter. And the rationale here is that if we put on the long finger the achievement of net zero to 2050, it tends to drift in terms of our actions. And we know from the science, and we know from the analysis that has been done so far, that we need to take action. We need to take it immediately, but we need to take a lot of action. Indeed, in Ireland, we are seriously challenged with the action that we will have to take. And indeed, what we are looking to achieve between now and 2030 is effectively a doubling of our efforts in the space of climate action. And I think it's particularly relevant to have the conversation with yourselves today, because many of the actions will ultimately have effect and impact at the local level. It's important, of course, that we have the legislation in place that gives us the background. It's also important that we have national policies and support measures in place. But in the end of the day, the action will take place at local level, and it is your role and your impetus and your guidance that will ultimately deliver the results on the ground. And I fully understand that as local authorities, you are charged with many and diverse functions. Indeed, you are a mini state in your own locality because you look at almost all of the actions and policy areas. And I suppose my first message today is that climate action, be it mitigation or indeed adaptation, is effectively part of normal business. And I think we need to, move it away from the periphery and saying this is yet another separate action, and rather mainstream it into our existing actions and make it become integral in the normal course of a business, the normal course of things that we do in the routine day-to-day effort. The second issue there is that I really do believe, and I would congratulate the colleagues for the reports that they've done, and indeed the CAROs in their coordination role as well, in terms of giving visibility to what is actually happening on the ground and sharing that experience across all of the local authorities, but also making it available to local politicians so that they can see the results, and also the citizens, the communities, so that they can be reassured that their trusted local authorities are in fact very active in this space and are supporting them in taking the actions further forward. So I think these are areas that really fit together with the normal mandate. I'm glad to see that the bill actually increases the mandate and gives greater visibility to the local authorities as part and parcel of its elements, and I believe that's the right way to go. When we look at economic opportunities coming out of the climate actions, as I say, for me, mitigation and adaptation are effectively two sides of the same coin. So some of the things I will deal with would be mitigation and some will be adaptation. But I think the first issue, and this is something that you do as a normal course of events, which reinforces the message that climate action is no longer separate, it is actually an integral part of your normal daily business, is that when you look at economic opportunities, the first step, of course, is to look at your own resources. What do you have in your locality? What are the resources? What are the natural resources, for example? They might be, very fertile agricultural land. You might be a coastal community. You might be an urban community. So what are your natural resources that are available to you? And secondly, what are your human resources? Because ultimately the endeavour will rely on human effort. So it's useful to know what is your current population resource, and indeed what is your longer term population need or trend likely to be. And of course, underpinning both of those natural resources is the question of finance, but we all know that finance is free and we get it very easily once you go through the paperwork and the procedures. But in terms of looking at the opportunities, one of the ways, and to some extent the Climate Council is currently in preparing the budgets, the 5-year budgets, we're looking at what are the implications for employment, what are the implications for competitiveness and indeed the attractiveness of the country generally, because foreign direct investment is of course a huge part of our industrial fabric. And we're also looking at what are the social justice elements that we really need to take into account in terms of presenting those budgets. And to some extent, we've divided the analysis across the 5 very obvious sectors. And if I start with perhaps the first one, which we will look to as a lead sector in terms of our decarbonisation efforts and ultimately tackling climate change, and that is our power sector. Because currently we are a fossil fuel based power system. We have about 30% of our electricity coming from renewables. We have a government target in place that says we're going to achieve at least 70% renewable electricity by 2030. And this is important for a number of reasons. Firstly, it means that we will use our own natural resource. We have the best wind resource in Ireland of any country in Europe, and we now have the technology to capture that and to use it to power our electricity system. We currently import oil or gas, as the case may be, of something between 5 and 8 billion euros a year, fossil fuels, to run our electricity system. And that goes to other parts of the world. And that money leaves our economy and we pay for a raw material that we have to use. Now we can take that funding, use it for our own natural resource and benefit within our society. And in that context, it means that we are developing and expanding an existing and a future power resource. That will come from wind, obviously, because we have a lot of it. And indeed, today we have an awful lot of it blowing. But it is a huge factor in how we're going to decarbonise. So we have a situation in Ireland today where we have about 4 gigawatts of onshore wind, and that will ultimately need to go to about 8. So we need to double the onshore wind, and we're looking at somewhere between 3.5 and 5.5 gigawatts of offshore wind, which is new for Ireland. It happens in other countries, but we're now going to roll it out in Ireland. And this is a huge industrial development with attendant economic opportunities. It's a new industry that we're growing. At the moment, we have about between 8 and 10,000 people employed in this industry, and we're looking at bringing this up to about 25,000 by 2030. So the job growth in the power sector, in all elements of the power sector, is huge. It's not just engineers, although we need a lot of them. There will be many different skills that are needed and required going forward in that space. And much of the economic opportunity will exist in all local areas, particularly those that are energy rich in terms of wind and can produce power. So I think that's really an important area to look at in terms of the economic opportunities. And that's without going into the devolved economic possibilities out of electricity. And perhaps I could come back to that at the end. The second big area, and it's a significant change already in the Climate Action Plan for 2019, is that we are going to retrofit 400,000 houses in Ireland and roll out 600,000 heat pumps. And the skills and human capital that we require for that is very substantial. We're looking at somewhere, again, around about 25,000 ultimately long-term jobs. So these are not short-term jobs. It sounds like a very big number to say that we're going to retrofit 400,000 houses between now and 2030. But remember, we have almost 2 million houses in Ireland. Now, not all of them will need to be retrofitted, but this is an activity that will continue beyond 2030. So it's not a short-term scale, it's not a short-term job. This is ultimately a career that we're talking about for people. And it is an opportunity that will exist throughout the country. It's not localized just in cities. This is relevant wherever we have people living throughout the country. And the opportunities exist for people who perhaps are in jobs today that will reduce in their relevance to shift and retrain into this space. And this is possibly a key area that we need to develop in all of our communities. The third big sector that we're looking at, of course, is transport. And here, the solution in many respects to transport, at least for passenger transport, is coming through in new technologies in the form of electric cars. And we have, again, Ireland has a very extensive target for that for 2030. And it means a shift in not just what we drive, because of course we'll be moving to electric car, but how we manage our mobility and how we support the transport in our own passenger vehicles, but moving beyond that into small scale commercial vehicles, vans, and going forward into the longer term into heavy duty vehicles and what we will use for those. And in that context, I'm going to make a link to the agricultural sector, because when we look at heavy duty transport, at the moment, our technology really doesn't allow us to use electricity for heavy duty vehicles. We're looking at using either biofuels or biogas, as the case may be. And this is a real opportunity for the agricultural sector, which we have in Ireland, which we have a very successful sector. But like any other sector, the agricultural sector will go through changes as we go forward with climate adaptation and mitigation. But the key issue here is, what are the new opportunities that are coming down the track? Perhaps not for the whole of farm change, but maybe part of farm. We're all aware of the targets that we have in place for afforestation and the benefit that that is to our climate action. But it's also relevant to think of other activities that farming enterprises can make and that can be used in this context. And of course, a final issue to address then is the whole sector of industry. And one of the things that's particularly relevant in the Irish context is that Ireland has a growing economy, for which we're very glad, I have to say. But to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at a time when your economy is growing is a double challenge, really. If the economy was static, it's one challenge, but at a point in time when your economy is growing, it's really a double challenge. And our industry is projected to continue to grow, which of course is very good news, but it means that we really have to take on board the challenges of decarbonisation in our industry. And again, one of the big areas here will be the whole question of heat used by industry. And what is the alternative that is available to our industry in a decarbonised sense? For example, producing biogas from anaerobic digestion, and again, offering this as economic opportunities in the agricultural space. So you can see that as you go across the sectors, there are real opportunities, there are new job types, there are new job areas, there are new companies and structures that will come into effect. And I haven't even touched upon the area of, the Internet of Things and big data, which will become systematic in the way we do things and in how we run our businesses, and effectively also how we use our energy going forward. And we are very well placed across the whole country in terms of our knowledge skills in that space. But I would like to just raise one small issue, if I may, and that is that these are opportunities, they're good news stories. We will be challenged to make the most of them, of course, but we have good experience in that context, and I'm very confident that with local authority support, we will maximise the opportunities of these new businesses. But I think we also have to be very clear and honest with people who are currently in structures and in jobs that perhaps do not have a sustainable future, where we have to be upfront and frank and say, your job, it's there today, but it might not be there 10 years from now. But do not be afraid. We have plans in place. We have structures in place. We have training modules in place. There will be lots of new job opportunities, and you will be supported in your training in order to avail of those opportunities. Because one of the fundamental issues of this whole, shall we say, fight against climate and the actions that we're taking is to ensure that we bring the entire community with us, the entire society. There are people in our society who are more vulnerable. There are people in our society who risk being left behind. So it is a fundamentally important issue that we ensure that the outreach and the support to all parts of our society is such that everybody will be able to benefit from this transition and avail of the new opportunities that are coming down the track. And in that context, I really do believe that local authorities have a fundamental role to play. You are the trusted partners of communities. You are the go-to point for a lot of the information and the access to a lot of the funding and training opportunities that will be made available in local areas. And you are the location where new businesses will come to first in terms of support as they are setting up. So your role is pivotal. I don't underestimate the challenge that you are facing. All I can do at this stage is say, I wish you all of the success, and I can tell you that the Climate Change Advisory Council will be supporting you in every way that we possibly can. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Thanks very much, Marie. Thanks for that. And you can unmute now, or you can mute now. Thanks very much for that, and plenty of food for thought there. If we get a chance to ask Marie questions at the end of the session, if that's okay. So if people want to put a question up in the chat for Marie, do that now. I would now like to introduce Alan Dunney, who will provide an overview of the project to date. Alan is the Regional Coordinator with the Eastern Midlands Climate Action Regional Office, and his role is to assist the 17 local authorities in that region to drive climate action at both regional and local levels, to coordinate engagement across the varying levels of government, and to help build on the experience and expertise that exists in the area of climate change and climate action. So over to you now, Alan. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna Marie. I'll just share my slides here now. Can you see that, Anna Marie?
Yes, that's fine, Alan. That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So thanks very much for that introduction, and Marie, thank you very much as well. I have to say I found your presentation to be absolutely brilliant. It was inspiring. So I'm just going to give a very brief and a kind of broad overview of the project so far, and hopefully set the context for the role of local government in this space, as well as maybe providing a segue into John's presentation and your own presentation at the end, Anna Marie. So for anybody attending who doesn't know who we are, the CAROs were established in 2018 following on from the the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Act of 2015 and the subsequent National Adaptation Framework. Our initial task was to assist all counties to strategically plan for dealing with the effects of climate change by developing and adopting their climate adaptation strategy by the statutory deadline of September 2019. So you can see on the map, there are 4 offices hosted by Mayo, Cork County and Dublin City. Kildare hosts the Eastern and Midlands office, and we're partnered with Kilkenny County Council because of the size of our region. So you can see the green region there, we have 17 local authorities in the Eastern and Midlands. So our core work is around coordinating and facilitating climate action in our constituent local authorities across all of the functions of local government. The focus has really progressed beyond adaptation in recent times, especially because of national policy and an increased ambition for climate action at all levels of government. One current example of how this is really manifesting itself at the moment is the work that our planners are doing in terms of climate proofing the county development plans. We're also working to build climate action capacity in the sector and have just begun rolling out a training programme for all 28,000 staff and 949 elected members. Nearly 5,000 people have received climate action training since January, and this is being delivered in collaboration with the LES NTG and is supported financially by the Department of Environment, Communications and Climate. So each CARO has also been assigned a regional specialism relating to climatic risk, be that coastal erosion, sea level rise, flooding, or the urban and heat and cooling effects arising from climate change. So we're also looking at the opportunities arising from climate action, and this is strongly supported here in Kildare by our Director of Services, Joe Boland, and our Chief Executive, Peter Carey, who also chairs the National Local Authority Climate Action Steering Group. These specialisms are being advanced in collaboration with the third level sector, and we're working very closely with Maynooth University School of Business and their Geography Department, as led by Professor Peter Thorne and Professor Conor Murphy. So David in Mayo, for example, is also working closely with UCG, Liam in Cork is working with UCC, and Dave in Dublin City collaborates in an ongoing way with DCC. So finally, we hope that in a post-COVID world, we'll be in a position to really drive community engagement and capacity building through our community sections, and there's a lot of work going on in the background in preparation for this. So I think it's safe to say at this stage that we all recognise that climate change is a significant challenge of our time. Tackling climate change through the transition to a climate neutral economy will place extraordinary new demands on us socially, economically and environmentally. Moving away from fossil fuels, we're seeing stronger focus on clean energy technologies, active transport, digitisation and the natural environment, such as the bog restoration and afforestation programmes that are beginning to kick off here in Ireland. This is bringing with it a growing appetite for sustainable opportunities. So at an EU level, the EU Green Deal pledges at least 1 trillion over the coming decade on climate, environmental and just transition investments to enable the transition to a climate neutral green economy. This is at the same scale as previous EU infrastructure programmes that we have benefited greatly from here in this country. So this funding will target investment in areas such as the circular economy, clean energy systems, transportation, biodiversity, agriculture, sustainable travel, etc. And the EU Green Deal is supported by a range of policy documents, EU law, a vision for the just transition and proposals for modernising agriculture. So why does the EU Green Deal, I suppose, concern us in local government? Well, firstly, I think we can all accept that there are many opportunities for new and improved businesses associated with such massive levels of investment. I think that's taken as a given. And it also leads on to our role, like the areas for investment are such that they either mirror in one way or another or rely on most of the functions and services delivered by local authorities. This means that we can really facilitate new businesses through direct support from our LEOs, but also through adapting our day-to-day work and really chasing funding to deliver on-the-ground projects and initiatives in support of climate policy. John has done a lot of work at this, in terms of identifying these opportunities, and we'll take a look at that in his presentation later. We also have the Climate Action Charter that has been signed by all counties. Action 3R on the Charter calls on local authorities to specifically support enterprise through our LEO and LCDCs to exploit opportunities which will arise from meeting the challenges of climate change. So this is one of only 20 or 25 actions on the Charter that all speak to us really embracing climate action and how we do things. I think Marie referred to that earlier on as well. So in addition to signing the Charter as reflected by the photo of Paddy and the 2 former ministers on the previous slide, The CARO work programme, as agreed between the CCMA and the Department of Environment, Communications and Climate, also calls for us to encourage economic development and local innovation through the broader economic function and through the LEOs. So in addition then to the Charter and our own work programme, and much more importantly really, each local authority has adopted their climate change adaptation strategy or action plan in the case of Meath and the 4 Dublins. So these strategies were adopted by the elected members in September 2019 and really are a signpost for how we want to engage with climate action in each of our counties. This will be strengthened further, of course, over the next year or so when we will be updating these strategies after the draft climate bill has been enacted, and we'll do that by bringing mitigation objectives and actions into play. So the just transition really hit the ground a couple of years ago with Breda Maher's decision to cease intensive peat harvesting across the Midland counties of Offaly, Longford, Laois and Westmeath. This also reaches into Kildare, Roscommon, Tipperary and East Galway, and all of these counties are represented through the structures of the Midlands Regional Transition Team. It was at this stage that we began to look at the concept of local government playing a role in driving economic opportunities arising from climate action. And working with Anna Marie and her team in Offaly County Council, we hosted a conference in Tullamore to begin this conversation around what businesses might look like into the future. The conference was really well attended, and I would say that it became apparent, I suppose, to us very quickly that there is a genuine interest across the sector to take advantage of these new opportunities, even if people weren't quite sure of where to start. So following on from the conference, we decided to analyse all 31 of the adaptation strategies or action plans with a focus on economic development and enterprise. So the first thing to say is that every local authority has identified themselves that there will be opportunities for the economy, for the environment and for new technology arising from climate action. I would bring this a step further and say that all 31 local authorities have actually expressed a desire to support these opportunities through their work. 22 have recognised the desire to leverage economic opportunities from implementing climate action through their functions, and 14 have committed to develop climate action awareness initiatives for local businesses. So more recently, of course, the Climate Action, Transport and Networks Committee, supported by the LGMA and the CAROs, developed the Local Government Climate Action Strategy, and it was adopted and launched by the CCMA a few weeks ago. Most of us would have probably attended that launch, and Paddy and David gave a really good overview of the strategy, and for anyone who has taken a look at it since, will have seen Strategic Goal 6, which seeks to mobilise climate action in enterprise and support the transition to an inclusive net zero and circular economy. So this project most definitely works in support of that goal, and action number 6 that calls for local authorities to utilise best practice in promoting economic opportunities that arise from climate action within local enterprise. So it's fair to say that our work in this area has evolved since the conference back in late 2019, and towards the end of last summer we made approaches to a number of external agencies and government departments with a view to developing a support network for local authorities in this area. The project that has emerged is under stewardship of Anna Marie, who links it back to the CCMA Business, Enterprise and Innovation Committee, and we're so thankful to all of our partners who you can see on the left-hand side of the slide. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with each and every one of them through our project working group and our steering group, and I'd also like to thank Jack for chairing our working group and Sean for his knowledge and support to the project. So in essence, I suppose, look, the journey that we're on is an exciting one. It's new. As you'll see from John's presentation, the opportunities are almost endless for us. We're hoping that this is the beginning of a conversation and that we can continue to inform and advise local authorities of the potential for opportunities that will emerge from delivering projects at a local level in the climate space. So hopefully this will encourage local innovation through our broader economic and community leadership remit, with technical support for new businesses from the local enterprise offices. So I'll defer to Dr. John Cullen and Anna Marie to present to you on our research to date and the direction of travel and next steps for the project. Our aim is to bring the policy and research down to the ground and to support practical action that will have a positive impact on our local business communities. And as I've mentioned, we hope that this is the start of that conversation and that we can continue to raise awareness and bring shared learning on this topic to all local authorities. So thanks to everyone for listening to the presentation. I hope that I've given a broad overview of the project and put our work in context when it comes to climate action as a new function, or I suppose service for local government. And I'll stop sharing my screen there now, Anna Marie.
Thanks, Thanks very much, Alan. Thanks for that. And not to delay, I'm going to go on again. Any questions for Alan will be taken at the end. So if you want to put those up in the chat now, that would be great. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce now Dr. John Cullen to present the Local Government Survey and presentation of policy research. John is an Associate Professor at the School of Business in Maynooth University, where he's been since that school started in 2008. He's also currently acting as Dean of the Faculty of Social Science, and his research is concerned with the practical ways in which managers and organisations learn responsible management, ethical leadership and sustainable change practices that help their businesses to grow while contributing to environmental and social sustainability. So I'll hand over to you now, John, and you can unmute. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, Anna Marie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, and the slideshow is up great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna Marie, for all of your support in this, and also to Alan, who's really been the engine behind getting all these different groups together and to getting all the activities up and running. Now he got this project off the ground this time last year, and if you can cast your memory back to what life was like this time last year, I think it was a time when there was a lot more uncertainty for everything than any of us could remember. So the action that he got going was really very, very impressive. So in the midst of all of this uncertainty, we needed to get to a point where we needed to understand what the project was going to deliver, and we suggested from the outset, I suppose, when we began to really crystallize in around September or October, and I'm sorry if my timelines are a little bit wrong on this, Alan, but we recognized that we had to kind of find out where things were in order to develop the project more down the line. So we decided to put research at the centre, and the approach that we took was very, very pragmatist. It was very much about, let's see what we know in order to determine what the next step is. So it's a bit like, say, in World War II, the soldiers trying to land on the beachhead. So once you get past the machine gun fire and you get onto the beachhead and you settle down your terrain, then you get up and you watch and you see how things are changing around you, so you can plan what the next stage is. So this was very much the research that you have in these two reports. They were intended to be kind of initial compass setting pieces of research, so we could figure out where we were going to go next. And it turned out to be that the findings in them, I just found them fascinating, because what it does underpin, what they do underpin is, number one, climate action can be planned at any level, and legislation can be put in place and instruments can be developed and policy can be developed. But the rubber hits the road at the local level. Local authorities, local businesses are the people who make climate action happen. Other groups as well, of course, but in terms of the economic opportunities and the economic aspects which we know are needed to sustain interest in sustainability and climate action, this happens. This is, made in the decision of the offices of everybody who's at this meeting today. So when we got to the terrain, we had to get a plan what the next step, the next steps were. Now we managed to secure a small amount of funding from Maynooth University Social Sciences Institute, and indeed from Kildare County Council, to employ a research assistant who was a PhD from the Department of Geography, a really good engaged worker, a chap called Dean Phelan, who worked with us really well on it. And what was available to us within that short window, we wanted to get a report, say, from over the time frame from October to early January this year, was to focus on, we decided to focus on two main areas that were more doable, for want of a better word, than others. And these were, one leg was a policy analysis, and the second one was a survey. Now, everybody's always interested in seeing what the policy research was first, but I think if you stick, bear with me on this one, I think that the survey findings, you'll find some interesting work in there as well. Just trying to move forward there. Okay, so we had two different legs to that survey. Now the policy analysis piece was undertaken over November, December and January. Now, one of the things that I discovered about this was policy analysis is not like you get a big chunk of documents, you sit down, you analyze them and you pull through the results. New documents come online all of the time while you're doing it. So you're trying to hit several moving targets at once at the same time. And of course, you know, since this these reports were drafted, we have a new bill, a new climate action plan in draft as well. But we wanted to still kind of distill what the key opportunities were that were coming out of this space. And what we noticed from analysing, you know, the 32 local authority plans, the 11 national plans that were live at that time, and of course the European level documents. Now, when you say, you know, the EU Green Deal or the Farm to Fork strategy is a policy document, they run to hundreds of pages. So Dean did a huge amount of research by just trawling through these, trying to figure out all of the economic implications for local authorities in Ireland. You know, the European ones apply at a transnational level, but we're trying to figure out just for Ireland to try and distill what these were. Now, one of the, I suppose, the things that we did, we found there were myriad opportunities that were available, but we were able to group these together under 7 shared areas, 7 central themes, if you like. And it's hopefully clear that the from these, that when we look at them, although that these are highlighted at the European level, the national level, and the local authority level, again, what becomes clear when you look through them is that the front line of the war against climate change, the front line of the people who are fighting to kind of remedy the climate emergency, is very, very much held at the local level. Local businesses, local authority, local communities working together. Have to happen at the local level to kick through. So the 7 thematic areas there. The renovation wave, retrofitting. You already mentioned a lot, particularly in relation to employment this afternoon already. Afforestation, research, innovation, technology, transportation, renewable energies, not surprising. The working hubs is something that is, you know, it had been there in the background, but alongside, you know, the growth of remote work and the travel restrictions and the realization, you know, the kind of the silver lining on the very dark cloud of COVID was a realization that there are different ways of working, and working hubs became very hot. They already had been, I think, in some areas, but became very salient over the course of the few months that we were working on the project. And finally, of course, the area that's been, I think, most pressing for all of us for a long time has been the promotion of the circular economy. So just to look through those main themes, what we've done in the next few slides is we've highlighted what they've said at the European and the national level. But again, we can see where the the economic opportunities in particular, because that's what we're focusing on here today, is these are the ones that are realised at the local level. So at EU and national level, the renovation and retrofitting of public and private buildings, specifically in relation to local authority dwellings, are to be brought to a minimum of a B2 equivalent BER, and local enterprises, of course, can compete for public service contracts. At the local authority level, this means that there's a huge amount of implications for constructing, renovating, and retrofitting building, and including, you know, looking at things like, you know, the NZEB energy regulations, maintenance, repair, and innovation, of course. And renovation, of course, are very important there. Now, national policy says that publicly owned buildings will be retrofitted to a B2 minimum rating, and also to 500,000 homes by 2030. So 30 million euro has already been allocated to Midlands communities for social housing, and 65 million approximately for expertise. So the economic opportunities that fall out of this, just the retrofitting piece alone, are 1, upskilling, training, apprenticeships in what was once a niche area, renovation and retrofitting. So once a niche area, it's now a growing niche. And soon it's not going to be a niche for long. Soon it's going to become a very significant part of training in this area. Now, the new passive or near zero energy building standards, these are going to require new technologies, and this is an opportunity again to support innovation and new jobs in areas such as manufacturing, construction, and indeed research and development. Which leads us to the next theme, which is research, innovation, and technology. So there's, the EU national policy documents. They've highlighted the opportunities that are available to local enterprises in the area of research, technology, and innovation that help us, move towards carbon neutrality. At a local authority level, the opportunity to develop green innovations and technology, working with LEOs, of course, in a range of different areas are really important. So what are the economic opportunities specifically that can come out of these? Now, creating a carbon neutral world and a carbon neutral economy, it needs new thinking, new innovation in multiple areas that go from, as we've said there, from plant life to flood resistance to construction. And there's a difference, there's a huge range of what it is that we can do, and some of it's quite specific. So, for example, Action 69 of the Climate Action Plan, for example, it supports biomass and anaerobic digestion for rolling out the support scheme for renewable heat. But in a more general way, we can look at developing entire ecosystems, economic ecosystems, such as the Dingle Hub, as was presented at the conference, where you've got different parts that are working together synergistically in a way where one kind of helps the other one and helps them to develop, all of which helping us achieve the aims of climate action, while simultaneously creating economic growth, enterprise opportunities, and furthering employment. You've got energy efficiency, remote working, community development, the fostering of social enterprise, and sustainable rural development, all of which are kind of informing and feeding and driving on each other in the through the potential of a hub like the Dingle Hub. So here's the question: what are the additional startups who can also develop, use new technologies to the mandated role of the local enterprise offices? And technology, of course, is a huge component of the next area, which is transportation. Now, at EU and national level, developing an improved transportation system through building public transport routes and sustainable transport systems and pop-ups and everything that goes along with that has been established. But local authorities do this already, and I have to say that I think it's noticeable just how ahead local authorities have been in this space for some time already. Well, so while transnational policy like the EU Green Deal and the Smart Mobility wing of that of that instrument, while it suggests, while it stresses has to be developed, has already been a part of many local authorities' work and practice for some time. Public transport, greenways, blueways, and the construction of greenways and blueways, car and bike sharing schemes, EV fleets and charging points. And of course, there has been a €72 million investment in active travel under the programme for government, and a separated cycling and walkways infrastructure, and local active travel offices have been allocated over €5 million. But the other economic opportunities that exist in other spaces arising from this: smart travel, sustainable local tourism along the greenways, blueways, cycle routes, and etc. So I'm watching my own time here now. Afforestation, of course, is from what I can see, most climate scientists agree that if we were to do one thing to increase carbon capture, to slow down global heating, if we were to do one thing, it would be to plant more forests, more forests. So afforestation is kind of the if you look at it, it's kind of the key arrow in the pack of arrows to actually impact climate action and to revert the course of climate change. In rural communities in particular, the forestry industry counts for around 12,000 jobs each year. And the programme government wants to increase afforestation rates to 8,000 hectares per year. So there are economic opportunities related to employment growth, to new roles in areas such as, conducting ecological assessments, monitoring monitoring forests, which is actually going to be a hugely important area, I think, in the future. Then, of course, forest maintenance and landscaping, sustainable pest control, and biodiversity management within the forests, of course, as well. Renewable energies are probably one of the main areas in which people associate local action with local action with local businesses in climate action. Now, if I could just kind of spoiler alert, as they'd say, just to fast forward to the survey, our respondents in the LEOs and the enterprise divisions, these ranked energy as the highest. There's the most ranked area where most future employment creation potential was seen for the future. Now, by 2030, 70% of all of our energy must come from renewables. So there will be a significant increase in sustainable energy communities, which of course include things like the, realizing the potential for offshore renewables, and the provision of 600,000 renewable sources such as heat pumps by 2030, and around 25,000 in commercial properties. So this action alone has the potential to create new employment opportunities in developing, manufacturing, installing and maintaining, and again, upskilling and training will be required in this area. And local authorities have a significant role to play in this place as well. Now, I think, as we'd mentioned, a little bit earlier, working hubs, not a day goes by when remote working in hubs isn't discussed in the mainstream media, and policy is supporting growing numbers of co-working and enterprise hubs to stimulate local growth and to lessen pressure on business accommodation in cities and towns, and to reduce unnecessary commutes. Besides this, economically, renovation and retrofitting, particularly in older buildings, which will house these hubs, will further support construction development. And of course, to use the Dingle hub as an example, again, there are clear connection to what the sustainable energy communities can actually do. Just to speed up a little bit here, sorry, I'm taking it longer than I should. In terms of promoting the circular economy, we know that there's extensive policy support to promote regenerative models of recycling and waste minimization and prevention across all sectors. So policy is, aims to reduce waste landfill by 10% by 2035, and to reduce food waste by 2030 to 50%. Aim to recycle 70% of all packaging waste and 55% of all plastic waste, and to eliminate all non-recyclable plastic. So we're talking about getting rid of a lot of things, but it's the economic opportunities come from what we develop in this space. So there's a need to move away from convenient forms of packaging. And this move the journey on this move contains significant business opportunities, because there are new business models and services required. We can just begin to see these developing again. What's interesting about them, this particular space, is that this is something where business and local businesses and local authorities can work quite closely together. So this is basically key to everything that we found in this report. Climate action is best delivered through local authorities working with local businesses, and the local element is where the environment, the environmental, the economic and the social impact, they all come together. So, we know COP26 is gearing up in Glasgow, and we know that the corporate sustainability reporting directive has already been approved in the EU level, and it's moving its way through Parliament at the moment. But what these are kind of high level initiatives, and again, these are made happen. The pressure to make them happen at the level of local authorities and local businesses. So this is really the space in which all of this happens. Now, to move towards looking what we saw in that space there, the key findings from our survey, just to foreground that for everyone, is that there's strong levels of awareness of the availability and the importance of climate action and climate action measures and instruments as they exist at all levels amongst the local, the LEOs and the enterprise divisions and local authorities. So that's the plus side, is that everybody knows that there's a huge amount of awareness that there's of the importance of this, but there is much greater that the other side of this. The gap is there is a need for much more supports to ensure that local authorities and LEOs can ensure that these are actually happen as a result of this. Now, we surveyed, once again, we were trying to do a lot in a small period of time, so we managed to distribute our survey towards the end of November, and within 3 weeks we had 49 responses. So thank you to everybody who assisted in getting that survey disseminated. So we had an approximate response rate of about 82%, right from directors of services to economic development officers, head of enterprise, economic development officers, a lot of different grades that are represented there. Most of the respondents were identified themselves as working in a primarily rural environment, so 60% there, and there were again very high levels of awareness of the importance of climate action at all levels for creating economic opportunities. Just a few slides here in the report that I think is nearly ready to go. We've two separate reports, and thank you again to Breda and Alan for tidying up my often incoherent slides. And I'm just showing these four together. So if you look towards the right hand side of each one of those four boxes, you'll see that they're bigger than the other ones. And what that is doing is it demonstrates a level of agreement with the willingness, the understanding, and the importance of encouraging climate-friendly action, or actions that are oriented towards climate neutrality amongst all of the local authorities who are concerned with economic development. The first one there, top left, micro enterprises and LEO clients in your area, they have the capacity to undertake green enterprise initiatives and to identify future opportunities. The next one at the top to the right, European national local climate action policies will provide economic and enterprise opportunities for local business. Down the bottom left, your local authority in LEO already has the capacity in place to identify and exploit local economic opportunities. Look at the agreement rates on these. Micro enterprises and LEO clients in your area will have an interest in understanding. So what we're seeing there is a willingness and an interest to participate in this work, to undertake green enterprise and climate-friendly initiatives. So if you like it there, the spirit is there to support this at both local enterprise and local business levels. I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the theme around sustainable energy. This table here on the left hand side ranks beliefs about where the most employment opportunities were going to come from in the future. And right up at the very top there, with the highest mean ranking score and probably the clearest blue water between it and other areas, was energy, followed by agriculture and food, and then construction. Okay, and then if you compare this to where the respondents, now there's a 42 respondents answering the question, who are talking about the sectors that they most work with. Their energy is somewhere down in the middle of the table, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 10, maybe less, right down there in the middle of that table. And agriculture and food, of course, not surprisingly, at the top there as well. This is just really for information, instead of if on the basis of the people who we'd interviewed, sustainable energy was seen as being the one on which most believe employment opportunities will come from as a result of climate action in the future. I'm just watching my time here, so apologies about my speed on this. So one of the things that we'd noticed was that although there was a good level of interest and a good level of activity, it was quite diverse in terms of its extent and its focus. We asked if local authorities or the LEOs, if they ran mentoring or training programs aimed at promoting green enterprise initiatives and identifying innovation arising from climate action policy. And you can see the split there fairly clearly. A third said no. Now, I suppose the phrasing of our question might have influenced how that was answered. We were asking about climate action policy there as well, and at the time, the LEOs, of course, were working on the Green for Micro program as well. But if we look at the table on the right hand, or say the pie chart on the right hand side, we asked how many had conducted research on local interest in green business, and 70% said no. No, nearly 20% said yes. So you know, that demonstrates that the level of kind of research activity that's been undertaken at a local level has fallen a little bit behind, is more what would you say, it's a little bit more diverse than you might find in relation to the other answers. So to sum up again, a lot of interest, a lot of willingness, huge amount of understanding of the capability for this, but on the ground, when we look at mentoring and when we look at research that's been done at a local level, these are very, very busy units, so there is a level for some additional support needed in that there. Now, when we look at this this area here, we're asking about the adequate resources that are available to local authority and LEO staff to build a capacity to assist current and future clients to exploit potential economic opportunities that arise for them. The question is not really about, you know, people being engaged and interested and wanting to do this work. It is a question of them having the resources and guidance available to do this well. This is where we begin to see the skew as we move to the survey change from the positive towards a more generally negative one. There's resources that are needed here. So we can see high levels of disagreement or strong disagreement there. And this increases as we ask about, you know, how do we support clients? How do we support businesses to transition what they do already to more sustainable business models? Or we ask about the adequate levels of knowledge on funding opportunities for climate action. Now, hopefully this survey and this work will go some way towards kind of pushing these forward. And there's a number of different recommendations that fall out of the of this report as we move towards it. But we can see increasingly that there are opportunities to kind of fill these up as they come along again. And one of the things that has kind of just landed on our desks yesterday was the Environmental Protection Agency's research program in this area, and the promotion, understanding of new business models. I think there's about 10 million available in total. I can't see my email and my memory isn't what it used to be, but 10 million. But there's funding available for, looking at new ways of understanding the circular circular economy and the development of new business models. So we can see that the resources required to address these gaps are gradually coming back into space as well, are gradually probably arriving at just at the right time to help businesses create economic opportunities for climate action. Just finally, if I can thank the steering group and the working group, Sean, Alan, Breda, Jack, and everybody who was involved with their advice right throughout this process. I'm presenting the results, but it was very, very much a team effort towards the right across the board. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, John. And Travis will unshare that screen now. Thanks very much for that, John, and well summarised given the raft of policies and research and survey details and information that you had there. And again, there'll be an opportunity to ask John questions on that at the end. So if people want to put the questions in the chat, just do that now as well. So that's now going to, thanks, Breda. I'm going to now present the next steps. And Breda has put up the presentation to share there. If everybody can see that, that's great. So really, I suppose, looking at the next steps for this project and where we go from here, Marie has provided insights there into the opportunities for businesses and for job creation. Alan has given the project overview in terms of its premise and the background to it. And John has given the overview of the research undertaken to date and and the findings of the survey as well that was undertaken by the heads of economic development and the local enterprise offices. And if I could thank all of those who returned those survey questionnaires and details as well. The research very much underpins the project as it advances to support the local authorities to both lead and facilitate on the identification and I suppose the realisation of those opportunities. And that's critical, I suppose, to how we support the local authorities on that, and where we go from here. So I suppose if you go to the next slide, Breda, where do we go from here? The immediate next step really of this project is the circulation of the policy analysis report and the survey findings of the relevant staff, local authorities, the directors, as I said, and the heads of enterprise, and the programme managers of the regional enterprise plans and others. So we're hoping we'll be circulating the details of that once we finish this launch today. And I suppose, as you can see from the 53 pieces of legislation that John referred to, or strategies and policies, etc., it's a rapidly evolving policy area, and it's important that the local government sector positions itself to capitalise on the potential opportunities for enterprise arising from climate action. And I suppose in doing so, it would honour the commitments of our own local authority climate action charters. We've started with this conversation today, I suppose, really, and we're going to build on it now from here. So another part of the project is to develop and maintain strong engagement with the various government departments. To ensure the effective policy alignment and collaboration between ourselves and the government departments, and also to continue our engagement with Enterprise Ireland and their newly established climate unit in the development of those new initiatives that will benefit business communities. So again, building on the collaborations that we have already, and of course the engagement with other agencies and bodies that support climate opportunities like the SEAI and the EPA. The key objective here is to continue to build a solid base for effective partnerships to bring about that meaningful and future positive future actions, really, in terms of that collaboration. So really at the core of this project then is the training and facilitation and provision of support to local authorities, which would include their economic development function, the local enterprise offices, and allowing them to work with local businesses to both create and realise those economic opportunities. And you can see from what John and Marie have said there's a raft of opportunities for job creation, and it's how do we facilitate and support those businesses and bring them along with us in terms of that climate change and climate action piece. So the early focus will be on capacity building through awareness training for local authorities. This will explore the climate neutral growth sectors and the various examples of best practice to show what this looks like on the ground. This training will be developed for delivery under the Local Authority Climate Action Training Programme, and Maynooth University and Dr. John Cullen will be instrumental in developing this training course. So with regard to continuing the research then, the initial research is completed and further research will be undertaken. The national climate policy continues to evolve, as I said, and I suppose very shortly we can expect the amendment to the Climate Act, which Marie referred to as well, enshrining the climate neutrality objective for a net zero economy. And the second iteration of the National Climate Action Plan as well during the course of the summer will strive to achieve a doubling of the ambitious objectives of the first iteration. So these will strongly influence other policy areas in terms of their responses and the delivery of climate emission reductions, and how this translates to potential economic opportunities, job creation opportunities that will need to be monitored and captured, really to help inform the work of local government. And again, that work will be ongoing. A more imminent piece of research ongoing at the moment is the international comparative piece. The Local Government Information Unit have been procured to explore how our counterparts in other jurisdictions, Europe and across the world, are advancing in this area, to see if there are learnings we can take on particular initiatives, best practice or ideas on economic opportunities and climate change. And this research is expected to be completed by the end of June and will very much add value to the research undertaken to date. It may explore beyond the economic and enterprise functions to establish further economic opportunities from climate action that might be pursued through the local authority sector also. So just in relation to the further events that are planned, Alan has already mentioned the conference held in 2019, and to extend that conversation a bit further on the nature of economic opportunities arising from climate action, the project provides for a national conference which will be held virtually, unfortunately, this year, but will be held over 2 consecutive half days, the 12th and 13th of October this year. And we're just working on that at the moment, and work is ongoing to explore the thematic areas on it. Just like the previous conference, it will explore a number of thematic areas to include real practical examples of initiatives, projects or businesses that have adapted or embraced the opportunity to deliver what climate action can bring. And a save the date notice for that conference will be issued shortly. With regard to informing other local authority policy areas, and Marie has referred there to the importance of embedding this in the way we work and the way we do our work, and embedding it in the culture of the local authority organisations. I suppose this project assists in informing and guiding local authorities and other policy areas on the potential opportunities for climate action, and has really to truly promote a bottom-up approach to local innovation through their broader economic and community leadership remit. This project, and particularly the research elements of it, will support local authorities in other relevant policy areas. For example, the regional enterprise plan reviews, which are ongoing at the minute, and guidelines for the local economic community plans currently being reviewed and almost finalised, and then leading on to the individual local authority, local economic and community plans, and even the county development plans. So it supports the use of all relevant levers to exert their influence in economic and enterprise remit, to support and promote potential opportunities associated with the environmental and technological advances that are associated with climate action. And you see things like NZEP was mentioned, but digitisation, the future of work, robotics, and also to support the transition to a zero carbon economy. And that transition, I suppose, very much felt with the decarbonisation agenda currently. So that concludes the next steps piece for the moment, and thank you very much for your attention and for your attention throughout the webinar today. Breda will stop screen sharing now, and could we have the panel back for the Q&A discussion session? And Breda is going to moderate this Q&A session for us. And we're inviting questions, comments, ideas, and even any comments in relation to the conference and thematic areas that may be of interest to people, that people might want to see explored further at the conference. So I'm going to hand over now to Alan and Breda first of all to kick off, and Breda will moderate the Q&A session. Thanks, Breda.
Thank you very much, Anna Marie. I'll just give you a couple of moments to settle down after your own presentation there, Anna Marie. I'm going to target John Cullen first, if I may, in relation to a question. John, you said that you thought living labs might be useful to help understand how economic opportunities can be created from climate action. What exactly do you mean by that in particular?
One of the things we noticed when we started the project, we had planned. I suppose if we had more time, I'm actually surprised that we managed to get the 2 legs done within the time that we had. But if we had more time, we would have spoken to local businesses as well. So to kind of round off those 3 areas that we needed to get to that beachhead, which was policy, local authorities, and local businesses. We didn't have time to talk to local businesses, but when we were initially planning and hoping to do it, we noticed that there had been a slew of surveys that had been released to SMEs and to micro businesses around Ireland from various places around that time, and that was fine. So we were conscious of the fact that there was going to be survey fatigue, that we were going to be hitting business owners who were already under considerable pressure. They'd never been locked down before. None of us had been, at this stage. Would have been the wrong type of thing to do. We wouldn't have got the results we would have wanted as well. And it did get us thinking about, well, what's the best and most practical way of actually working with businesses in this space. The living lab concept is something that's been used a lot in workplace digitalization studies and in initiatives right across the world where you bring a local authority and a local business group together, or any type of business, and you put them into the same space and you say, let's try and produce something that produces mutual benefits for us all. So rather than saying, we're going to train you how to do this, off you go and you do it, or here's a presentation on what the policy says and where the opportunities are, off you go and you do it. What this does is this brings the partners together into a shared space, right? You sound vaguer in that it can be a virtual one, or it can actually be a lived office where you come together and you say, okay, my business is traditionally, you know, highly wasteful. It's going to be threatened by the new legislation that's coming into play. And besides anything else, I just don't want to be doing the wrong thing in this area as well. Now, my customers, this is one of the things that we've seen a lot from our research with consumers. A lot of it comes from consumers are demanding these, but also that the businesses want to make the changes themselves. You get the parties together and they work on solutions where they don't know what the outcome is going to be. This means that rather than kind of abandoning people to do the work themselves, we realize that they are under pressure to get it done, and we work in a collaborative way. Now, what's called a lab is that the outcomes from that end up being more than a case study. What are the new models? What are the new approaches that could be picked up by local authorities or by businesses that can help them generate even more environmental and social gains than they would have gotten before, but also to help them deliver the economic opportunities, help them to realize those ones that come along. So what we really see, you know, I mean, if you look at the UN SDG 17, this is the one that if you're applying for any type of UN Sustainable Development Goal ranking, you can't apply for it unless you've demonstrated that you've worked in partnership. That's critical to sustainability. Businesses cannot deliver climate change on their own. Local authorities can't develop, governments can't, the public service can't. It has to be done in collaboration with each other. So you can't deliver climate change, can't deliver the positive benefits of climate action. The same goes for economic opportunities that come back together. Now, if you're to Google Live in Lab, you're going to find lots of different models that come up with lots of different approaches and applications. But in essence, it's a group of people with different interests working together to develop a new business model that actually has to work for everybody. Okay, so sorry, I could go on a bit at length.
That's great, John. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive answer to that. Thank you very much. There's a number of questions there in relation to the carbon budgets and kind of talking about kind of revenue streams and the impact of revenue streams, particularly where there's rates losses and things like that. But a particularly interesting question there around carbon credits linked to raising revenue, Marie, through private sector investment. And the example was given there of the peatland rehabilitation programme. Have you any thoughts in relation to that? So linking carbon credits to raising revenue. If I can get you to unmute there. Go again there. You're stalled. Or Anna Marie, if I can hand it across to you just to take it, if you have a point on it, we'll get Marie unmuted there.
Yeah, that's fine. I just hope Marie hasn't lost a connection. I know she was having difficulty area. They were quite stormy down there where she was today. So and I know she has another meeting as well at the end of this. So yeah, look, I suppose just in relation to the kind of the carbon sequestration and I suppose carbon credits that could be gained. I suppose there's been a lot of discussion around that in terms of the just transition piece as well, and the bog rehabilitation programme and how carbon sinks could be developed within some of that bog rehabilitation piece. There is a peatlands climate action scheme being undertaken by Breda Maher, PCAS scheme for that. I suppose it relates to their brown to green strategy, which obviously alludes to or necessitates the cessation of peat harvesting and accelerates the decarbonisation agenda, but it looks at things like renewable energies, wind and solar, transition to renewable green materials, and I suppose the bog rehabilitation is part of that. And there has been funding assigned at government level for that initiative, and as well as that, they have also been successful in harnessing an EU LIFE project around peatlands and people, and in terms of trying to work with, I suppose, the local communities around some of that bog rehabilitation piece. But Marie might want to offer some insight into the carbon sequestration and maybe some carbon credits for business that might come out of that.
Yes, my apologies. I was fighting with my mute button and I turned myself off in the process. So I think the computer won that battle. So, I mean, the whole issue of carbon credits, it's a very relevant issue, not just within countries, but across countries, of course, because when you look at, I just take, for example, in Denmark, they have set themselves a net zero target to be achieved internally in Denmark. Whereas, for example, the United Kingdom has set itself a net zero target, but they are going to allow purchase of credits from other parts of the world to contribute to that. So it's an international question, and I think internally within Ireland, it is a very relevant question because there are some sectors that will have greater difficulty to decarbonise, and injections of capital where you can get a credit from that will become relevant. And it's one of the things that it hasn't been formulated yet, but it in the Netherlands, they have developed their own, shall we say, internal market for such credits. And I think it is a possibility for us in Ireland to also look at the same thing, where we'd have our own little internal credit system where we could have injections of capital into one or other, let's say afforestation, just as an illustration, and the carbon credits would come out of it. So it's not in place yet. We have a model in the Netherlands that we could follow, and I think it is certainly something we should develop.
Great, thank you very much, Marie. Thank you very much. Just another one there, and another comment. I have two lists here. I've published and unpublished questions ongoing at the moment, so apologies there. Just a comment in there from somebody. Social enterprises are key to delivering targets in the circular economy. The more sustainable solution, for example, repairing and recycling, is not necessarily profitable and therefore not attractive to the business sector. So that's a key challenge, really, isn't it? If any, Marie, do you have a comment on that?
I do indeed, and it's a particularly timely question to raise, because I don't know whether this is generally available or not, but I got an email last night from Richard Bruton, the previous minister. I was very flattered, I have to say. He has just done a report on the circular economy, and I have to say our numbers are pretty poor. We have a long way to go on the circular economy, and it is an area where we could do an awful lot more. Apart from the climate side of it, I think sustainability of our industry and our business. We import a lot of materials, supports construction and other parts of our industry, and if we were able to recycle that, we can add an inordinate value. And I think part of the process here is to prioritize recycle in the procurement activity as part of the ESG. And that's an area where I think we can call on business to give preference to recycled materials rather than virgin materials in whatever business they're in, be it packaging, be it the inputs for their products, be it other raw materials, as the case may be. And again, it's a culture change, but it's a policy change that could be implemented very easily. And it's certainly one I think that would be not just good for the climate, but it would be good for the economy as well.
Yeah. And just a comment that has come in from another person, just to say that the idea of local authorities as a trusted partner that Marie had mentioned previously is a great starting place, and particularly for that circular economy piece as well. Anne Marie, did you want to come in on that then as well?
Just to say, I suppose the part of that circular economy, and for ourselves, the green procurement piece is something that we need to probably move on as well ourselves. And there are various, I suppose, clauses that can be put into tendering around green procurement and circular economy, and I think that's something that we probably need to progress at this stage as well. I know it's been used in a few areas to great effect, so it's something we could do.
Yeah, right. Another question and comment in here as well, and I think this is one that we've seen a lot throughout various events and conferences as well. It is a key challenge. Given that heat and transport are the main producers of carbon, how can the average person afford to buy an EV at a cost of 40,000, replace their oil boiler system with a heat pump at a cost of 11,000 euro? The transition to zero low carbon, even with grants, will be far too much beyond the reach of families.
But if I may comment on that, I think firstly, it's a very valid question, and it's a very real question. And part of the challenge that we're facing now is that where we have technological solutions, the electric vehicle, the heat pump, etc., these are capital investment activities, which means that we have to spend the money now, even though it's cheaper to run. It's cheaper to run an electric vehicle than to run a petrol or a diesel car. It's cheaper to run a heat pump than it is to run either gas or oil. But of course, it means you have to have the money up front. So there, I think that there are two issues that we need to look at. Firstly, we have to look at how we can ensure that people can get access to funding at the lowest possible rate. Now, I know this is a long story, but this is where I really do believe some of the European funding that Alan mentioned is particularly relevant. You know, if I just take in Germany, for example, retrofitting your house in Germany costs you 0.49%. So the money is effectively free. Now, you still have to have the money, of course, but you're looking at maybe a 20-year repayment period on effectively free money for somebody who might be, you know, who might have the fortunate position to have maybe just finished their mortgage and they want to try and upgrade the house before they retire and things like that. So it's long-term money that is almost free, that allows you as an owner of your own house to invest over a period of time in this costing. I think it's also true to say that the grant, I believe, is very important, but there is another area, and I've said this before, I must say, is that if you look at the cost of a heat pump, I mean, it's not cheap, I fully agree, but we know we're going to need 600,000 heat pumps, and we know within any local authority area how many, roughly speaking, that's going to be. I just wonder whether the power of purchasing in bulk could be brought to bear through the local authority system to facilitate a lower price for the individual. I mean, if you were able to get a 10 or a 15% or even the 20%, you know, discount on the heat pumps, you buy 200 of them or whatever it might be, you know, it's a very real return for the people in your community and makes it just that more manageable in terms of expenditure on their part. That doesn't discount the role of the public purse in terms of grants and incentives, be it tax or otherwise, in order to support people. But it's really important that people are in a position to make this decision in as cost-effective a way for themselves as is possible.
Thank you, Marie. Yeah, absolutely. And time is a great factor in relation to that as well. Just another one again, another challenge in particular is, you know, this whole climate action space and the opportunities to capture those. How are we going to do it? We hear a lot about climate action, but do we have the resources to meet the challenge within the local government system?
Well, I think Anna Marie, you're best placed on that one.
Take this one. Thanks, Marie. Yeah, I suppose that the resources are an issue and always are an issue for us. But how a submission has been made to the department in relation to trying to fund the climate action piece. I suppose one of the first steps, the climate action regional offices to support local authorities, I have to say has been a great resource. And just to acknowledge the work of Alan and Breda as well, not just around today's event and the reporting, but the supports to the local authorities that the CAROs are providing across the country. So that's one issue. The appointment of the climate action officers across each local authority area as well. Some already in place, some not yet, but very welcome. And I suppose it's a matter of trying to find then what initiatives and projects you can prioritise in particular local authorities. And again, I think as somebody said earlier, it's not a one size fits all. There are different, I suppose Marie mentioned the natural resources. There are different natural resources available in each local authority area. So it's trying to play to our strengths and see what we have, work with the local communities there. And I suppose some examples of that would be like the Green Offaly project through the Public Participation Network, utilising our network of heritage officers around biodiversity, the biodiversity and pollinator plans. And then obviously, and that's kind of the wider climate action piece, but in relation to business, our local enterprise offices are very well placed. We're looking at decarbonising towns now, and we're also looking at things like the Live Green Towns initiative. I know there's a Live Green Town here for Tullamore, which unfortunately got sidelined a little bit by COVID, but those types of initiatives would be very welcome. But I also think it's engagement with the broader sector. It's engagement by the local authorities, with the SEAI, with other agencies and bodies that can provide that expertise. I mean, you look at South Dublin County Council and what they have done with Amazon in terms of the district heating system, heating the local authority buildings, etc. It's a significant project. And if you look, I mean, even the digitisation piece, if you look at what the local authorities are doing in terms of the future of work and robotics and projects like that that are going on across a number of local authorities in conjunction with our technological universities, I think there's significant will there, and also there's innovation there. And I think if given the right leadership, I think we can certainly provide a lot of those initiatives and improve the carbon footprint significantly.
Thank you, Anna Marie. Just in relation to the previous question, somebody has suggested a finance model to support heat pumps to include purchase and investment finance model is an option. So it's, you know, it's good that we're thinking outside of the box a little bit as well in relation to that. I'm very conscious of time, Anna Marie. I think I'll take one more if that's all right.
Yeah, Breda, that's great, because we're just actually after the time now. Is just after. So one more question, then I'll close out. Thanks.
Great. Does the panel see Ireland becoming self-sustaining in as many sectors as possible while increasing our technology abilities to rapidly progress to that stage? Perhaps this could be considered as a topic in the autumn conference, as all players will be required to cooperate. So, Marie, will I target that to you?
Yes, well, I mean, first of all, I think Ireland is in a very good position. I mean, we're starting from the back foot because unfortunately our emissions have gone up over the last few years, but we're in a very good position because we have a very positive natural resource capacity, both in terms of, you know, wind, solar, water, the marine, coastal powers that can ultimately come there. So we're very well placed in that context, and we're even better placed, quite frankly. I'll be, you know, proud to say it. The Irish people are very innovative and are very effective, and we have demonstrated that pretty well over the last 25 years with all of the crises of various kinds that we have confronted and ultimately survived through and come out stronger on it. So yes, we can do it. I think we will have a specific challenge in a couple of areas. I think that our power we will achieve. I think our buildings will be slow, but we will achieve it. Our transport, for 3/4 of it, yes, we will achieve it. That would be passenger transport, light vehicles, and probably some heavy duty vehicles. I think we have a challenge for aviation. We, like everybody else, we're going to have it. And being an island and being very dependent on aviation, I think this is one of the areas that we as others will be very challenged in that context. I believe for the methane emissions, which, as you know, is 33% of our emissions here in Ireland, I think that is an issue that we will solve. We will get that right. It is a short-term gas. It does allow us to have some innovative approaches in that context, and we will get it right. And once we get it right, it will stabilise and allow us to move forward. So, other than aviation, I think we're very well placed in going forward for the future.
Thank you very much, Marie. And again, the suggestion to maybe consider that for the conference as a thematic area as well. We certainly can do that. Anna Marie, there are questions there. We just don't have the time to get around to them, unfortunately. So I'm just conscious that Marie has another engagement now. So if we could maybe do the wrap up and to complete the webinar.
That's great. Thanks, Breda. Thanks for that. Thanks very much, Breda. You can hear me okay, can you?
Yes. Yeah. Let's go.
Thanks very much to everybody for that. And Breda, we might have a look at those questions. You can submit them maybe to the panel, and we'll have a look at them and see what areas are coming up that might lead us to a bit of brainstorming around the conference as well. Okay, thanks everybody, and I know we're after the time, so I'm just going to finish out and just say I think that was a very good discussion. The questions are well thought out there as well, and there's a lot of debate and thinking, I suppose, around the whole area of climate action, and given the raft of policy, etc., that's there at the minute, it's a very broad area. But I do think that John and Marie nicely aligned. I think Marie had five sectors and John had his 5 themes or 7 themes, and they were all it was all encompassing and covered up all of the areas really that we can certainly be proactive on, and maybe for us, for the local authority sector, to prioritise some of those actions and work through them. And I think also, Marie said, I think resonates very much here with the Midlands, in that the jobs are changing, but for people not to be afraid of that there is training available to reskill for jobs of the future and for new jobs. And I know there's a challenge to that, and people are afraid of that change element to working. But at the same time, I think our ETBs and our ITs and the technological universities are all providing significant training and skills and upskilling for those particular new types of jobs. So a very good discussion. I just want to thank Marie and John in particular for joining us today. I want to thank Breda and Alan and the CARO who have done Trojan work on this. I also just want to acknowledge Travis O'Doherty and Mark Moran for all of their IT support, and particularly to me this week, and thanks very much for that, it's much appreciated, and to Marina Duffy in the LGMA also support. Thank you all for attending. I hope this has started the debate further and bringing it to a new level, and it's kind of a step change for everybody. And I hope we will see you all again at the conference event on the 12th and 13th of October this year. So thanks a million for joining, and I hope this was a benefit to everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.